So this is what we were talking about before, the opt-outs. So you can see where your city stands, and then the opt-ups. So for the opt-outs, we're at about 2.5 to 2.8%, depending on how it's counted. And then the opt-ups is about 2%. But different, Portola Valley's at 93.6 because, they were all enrolled in it. Menlo Park, you're at 3%. Brisbane, you're at 3.5%. Good job in your opt-ups.
Does that count the municipal count?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you have multiple municipal accounts, that
Or
each
probably
one.
a bigger percentage. 'Cause
Yeah,
yeah.
Good to go? Okay. So we're going to talk about energy procurement. And Siobhan Doherty is the director for this group. She's on vacation or coming back today, so I'm pinch hitting for her. But I've done a lot in procurement. So we're going to go over the team, the goals, procurement authority, a lot of regulatory requirements, and what our strategy is on procurement. So this is the Power Resource team. Siobhan Doherty is the director. She's got about 15 or 20 years of experience in energy procurement, a lot of it in the solar arena. Chelsea Keys is our Power Resources manager. She spends a lot of time working on resource adequacy and also monitoring the contracts that we've entered into. Peter Levitt is our associate manager of DER strategy. So Peter's leading the resilience project and getting the solar plus storage facilities to medically vulnerable, to community resource centers and critical facilities. And he's also working on distributed energy, like for community centers, like the Bellhaven one. That would be something that he'll be working on. We're also have an open position to bring in another person to work on DER strategy as well. DER standing for Distributed Energy Resources. Sarah Mata, she just joined us probably about a month ago. She's a renewable energy analyst and compliance analyst, so she does a lot of the work on all of the reporting that we have to do for what we're doing in the procurement side, and also just internal analysis of the projects. And then Mehdi Shariari is actually starting on Monday, and he's our senior renewable energy analyst. So just some of the key terms that we will be going over here, and these are terms you're going to hear all the time at board meetings. Renewable energy, we'll talk about what exactly that is. Greenhouse gas-free energy, what the difference is between those two. The RPS, the Renewable Portfolio Standard, which is basically a statute in California law as to how much renewable energy a retail service provider needs to deliver to their customers. REC is a renewable energy credit, which is the renewable attribute associated with renewable energy. PCL is the power content label. This is what we send out to all of our customers every year to indicate how much, what the percentages of different resources are. The IRP, the Integrated Resource Plan, Jeremy touched on that. We'll talk about that more. RA, Resource Adequacy. And PPA, Power Purchase Agreement. So those are a lot of the acronyms that we use in the power procurement side. You will be tested on this at the end of the day. Not really. So our goal is to design a diverse power portfolio. So if you look at our strategic goals, this is the first goal, which is to be 100% GHG free by 2021. To be sourced by 100% California RPS eligible renewable energy by 2025 on a time coincident basis, provided it is economically viable. So that's what I was talking about a little bit earlier. And then have a 20 megawatts of new local power by 2025. And then goal number 3 of our strategic goals is to stimulate development of new renewable energy generation and storage projects in San Mateo County and California through our procurement activities. So the authority that the board has given to us what I can approve as the CEO, what I can approve in consultation with our general counsel and the board chair, and then what comes to the board. So basically, any contracts for energy and energy-related products, which is electricity, capacity, RA, distributed energy resources. If it's a contract for 12 months or less for energy, or 36 months or less for local resource adequacy, then I have the, you've given me the authority to go ahead and sign those contracts, and that's basically because we need to move quickly sometimes on some of those things, and to wait for a board meeting would not be, we might lose the opportunity.
And so that has no dollar amount?
No dollar amount, it's really a time amount, yeah. Medium term, so contracts that are between 12 months and 5 years. I consult with general counsel, which is David Silberman, and Jeff Alfs, who's the board chair, and assuming they agree, then I will enter into those contracts. And then anything longer than 5 years comes to the board for your approval.
What percentages generally in these, or does it just vary?
Yeah, well, most of the RA, well, the local RA, there's 3 flavors of RA. I'm not sure we're getting into all that detail today, but the local RA, so that all of that is less than 3 years or up to 36 months. The system RA is usually less than a year. So usually most of the RA would be something that I can contract for without having to bring it to you. When we started, all of that was being brought to the board, and it was just so overwhelming for the board, and it just took so much time that we changed that.
I think Chelsea this year, negotiated 90 different agreements for.
Yeah, I think we had 91 agreements for RA this year, which was, I think the previous year was 37. So RA is just, it's takes a lot of time.
Yeah, Jan?
Yes.
Is the 20 megawatts of new local power include any contracts for energy efficiency? So
Not at this time, no.
no, so it's just new power, not energy saved.
No, we actually are not focusing on energy efficiency because PG&E still does that.
Okay.
And there's a charge on everyone's bill that's a non-bypassable charge that funds the energy efficiency programs that PG&E does. So rather than duplicating what they're doing, we just leave that to them.
Okay.
Marin Clean Energy did decide to approach the Public Utilities Commission and ask that they be allocated the funds for energy efficiency and run those programs. They advised us to not do that. It's a lot of people, it's a lot of work, it's a lot of reporting, and so we took that advice. So what is renewable energy versus greenhouse gas free energy? So renewable is electricity derived from a source that is not depleted and is not derived from fossil or nuclear energy. So if you see here, that would include biomass and waste. So biomass is like burning trees or waste products, wood waste products, geothermal, solar, all kinds of solar, wind, and small eligible hydro. So in California, small hydro is defined as less than 30 megawatts. That's just how they defined it back in the 60s and 70s. Greenhouse gas free, there's some duplication. So solar and wind and small hydro are also greenhouse gas free, but also large hydro. So hydro over 30 megawatts falls into the category of being greenhouse gas free, but it's not RPS renewable according to California's definition. And then nuclear is considered greenhouse gas free, but again, not renewable. So to date, when we do so for our default product, the 50% renewable comes from the resources on the left side. The additional 45% to get us to 95% GHG free is all coming from large hydro. So 45% is large hydro, 50% is renewable, and we'll look at a power content label. And So then there's the Renewable Portfolio Standard. And this is also known as the RPS. So this is a law that requires a certain amount of energy to be procured that is renewable. And it steps up. This year it's 33%. The law requires us to be at 60% by 2030, and then 100% carbon-free by 2045. So when we started out, we were already at 50% renewable. So we were accelerating the state's goals, from the very beginning. And then when our goal is to be 100% renewable by 2025. So again, we're accelerating the state's goals. Renewable energy is verified by REC ownership. So a REC is it's an electronic certificate that basically tracks every megawatt hour of renewable energy that's generated. And there's a whole tracking system that the state has developed called REGIS, the Western Renewable Energy Generation Information System. So every time we buy renewable energy, part of our contract is that the renewable energy credits that are generated from that are transferred into our account at Regis so that we can then provide the compliance report that says, yes, we did actually purchase this energy and we have all of these recs to back it up. So it's like a stock certificate, as it were, for renewable energy that we put in our account. And so what is the REC? It is a certificate of proof issued through the accounting system established by the Energy Commission, that's REGIS, that 1 unit of electricity was generated and delivered by an eligible renewable resource, and it includes all of the renewable and environmental attributes associated with that renewable resource. So that's what the law defines as the REC. And you'll hear that term a lot when we talk about renewable energy. So then there's the power content label. That's been in existence since 2009, and that requires all retail sellers of electric energy, including us, to disclose accurate, reliable, and simple to understand information on the sources of energy that are delivered to their customers. And it is exactly defined by the Energy Commission as to what that power content label will look like. And so this is what it is. It states what the eligible renewables are. So we just talked about that: biomass and biowaste, geothermal, eligible hydro, solar, and wind. And then, so that falls under renewables. And so for us, for our 2018 power content label, we actually were slightly above our 50%. We ended up procuring 51%. And then for coal, of course, we have 0 because one of our policies is to not contract for any coal. And then in 2018, our goal was to be 85% GHG free. So we had procured 35% large hydro to get to that 85% GHG free, and then no natural gas, nuclear, or other. And then unspecified is the other 15% that brings us to 100% in 2018 of all of our resources. So for 2019, when we issue this power content label, it will show 50% renewable, 40% large hydro, and then 10% unspecified. For 2020, it'll be 50% renewable. We're still having a conversation about whether the nuclear is also going to show up here. Our staff recommendation was to not have nuclear. And it was a close vote at the board. Once we get the actual allocation, we'll be bringing that back to the board. We would still prefer to have the nuclear stay 0. And then for 2021, we'll be 50% renewable, 50% large hydro probably. And then we'll start ramping up as we're working to our 100% renewable. So that's the Eco Plus. For Eco 100, we're sourcing that with 50% solar and 50% wind. And then the final column on the right is the California power mix. So that's how we kind of, it's not necessarily PG&E, it's what's the overall mix in California. And so you can see that there is a little bit of coal. There's a lot of natural gas. There's some nuclear. and some unspecified. So for the state overall, it's about 31% renewable. That will need to be 33% renewable for the 2021 because that's the law that requires us to be at 33%. Go ahead.
That actually includes the other CCAs then?
The California power mix, I think, includes everything. Do you know, is that the whole state and they just averaged that all out?
It's an average of the whole state.
Yeah, so everyone reports
So
in.
every load serving entity in the state is blended into that.
So it'd be PG&E, Southern California Edison, San Diego Gas and Electric, all of the CCAs, all of the municipal utilities, everyone. And every entity has to put out this power content label. So we sent that out in a postcard, I think in October. And the other side of that postcard talked about our electric car incentive. So there's a new format that's coming out for in 2021 for the 2020 reporting, which is going to include a graphic that shows the GHG portion and comparing it also with a graphic.
One more question.
Yeah.
Does the 2018 CA Power Mix actually include PCE's numbers as well? So it's truly everything?
It's everything.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so Jeremy talked a little earlier about the Integrated Resources Plan. So this is a requirement that was mandated by a bill passed in 2015. But we also did our own Integrated Resource Plan internally. I should have a copy of that to give to you. But there's also a compliance requirement to do this. So we're in the midst of that right now. And basically, it's a state process to make sure that there's going to be enough power and there's going to be enough of the right kind of power for the state. So to make sure that we're meeting the reliability needs, the RA needs, and also the GHG and renewable needs. So it's a complex process at the PUC. And this year we are submitting our IRP to the PUC. And last year we were doing some modeling. So we will be bringing this to the board multiple times this year. So in March, we're going to provide an overview of the process. And Siobhan will be getting into more details on that for you. In April, I think we're going to be coming with kind of an idea of where we think we're going to be going. And then in May, we're going to be asking you to approve our actual integrated resource plan because we need to submit that to the public utilities by July 1. So the PUC does not approve our integrated resource plan. You do as the board, but they certify it in terms of, yes, you turned it in, and they check that that all of the pieces that are supposed to be in there were done. And there's certain assumptions that they require us to use, or certain templates that they require us to use, so that all of the different load serving entities are, turning in something similar, so that they can mash it all together and try to figure out what's going on in the state. Resource adequacy. So basically the state determines, what is the overall amount of generation we need to have in California, and then they want a 15% margin on top of that, so that if a power plant was to fail, that the lights would stay on, or if a tree was to fall down somewhere and make a line fall down and a plant goes out, that the lights stay on. And that reserve capacity is called resource adequacy, or RA. And basically it's calculated by looking at what is our overall peak, how much, what is our overall load at peak times, and then adding a 15% margin onto that. And that's how much resource adequacy we need to contract for. And there's 4 different kinds here. There's system, PG&E local, PG&E other, and flex. So we have to make sure that we buy they tell us how much of all of these different things we are supposed to procure. And that's why we did 91 different contracts last year for RA, because we have to buy the right kind. It has to be in the right location. There's actually 6 or 7 local areas for PG&E that we have to go through. And actually, I think Siobhan went over this at the last board meeting. But, she's always happy to talk about RA. It's our it's our not favorite subject, but it takes a lot of time, and it's a very complex thing. And it's all transacted bilaterally, which means that we transact with another generating resource, and we buy a certain amount of RA from them. So we have to buy it by month. So we need to buy it for January, February, March, April, May. It's different amount for every month, depending on what our load is for that month. And then we have to buy these 4 different flavors for every month to meet this requirement. So it takes a lot of time. It's super important, and we do a good job in making sure that we procure all of it that we are assigned to procure. But because it is a bilateral market, there's no organized market for it. There's not a lot of price transparency. So this last year, prices went really high because there were some shortages in the market. It's all supply and demand kind of thing. And when there's not a market where you can see all the bids and the asks in one place, there's not as much ability to control how much we're going to pay for it.
Do the CCAs work together at all and compare?
Yes. In fact, we worked with the 5 CCAs down here, us, Silicon Valley, San Jose, East Bay, and Monterey Bay. We actually worked together to purchase the RA. But yeah, it's still complicated because we still each have to contract separately. Even if we get we might get an offer from someone for a certain amount, but then we divvied it up among those of us who needed it, and different people have different requirements because all of us have different kinds of loads. So, San Jose is in a warmer place, so they might have more requirement in the summer because their peak will be higher in the summer, and it's all just different. It's fun, this is really interesting business. So I just want to talk about our procurement. We use a risk management approach in our power purchasing. We always, of course, are looking for the lowest cost supply as well as diversity. So in our IRP, and I'll make sure I get a copy of that to you, and it's on our website. You can look at it. But there's 6 different areas that we look at in terms of diversifying our risk. So we look at term length. So we want to procure some resources short term, some medium term, some long term, so that we are not always, so that we're a little bit in the market and a little bit exposed to the market, but also a little bit protected from the market and doing some long-term contracts where we know exactly what the price is going to be. We also look for ownership diversity. So when we're doing long-term power purchase agreements, we want to make sure that we're not contracting with the same firm for a large amount of our business, because what happens if that firm goes belly up? We want to make sure we're protected there. We also look for different locations because there's different attributes of